Hello, everyone, once again, and welcome to our discussion today of the global EU market outlook between 2020 and 2024. My name is Paul Rusch. I'm a technology engineer with Sungrow Europe, and I will be moderating today's webinar. This webinar is live, and a recorded version will be available after the presentation and posted to our website. In addition, we'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions, please use the chat box below and type in your questions. We will try to answer all of them at the end during the Q&A. Now I'd like to introduce our presenters, Sungrow's Europe's own Chief Technology Officer, Stefan Froböse, and a very special guest and policy analyst from SolarPower Europe Association, who will be starting his presentation first, Raffaele. Sorry, I can't pronounce that. Can you please jump in?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I will share my slides right now. Yes, they should be up. So thanks for the invite to join this online conference. It's a pleasure to be here, first of all, and to represent SolarPower Europe. So in the next 20 minutes, I will present the key results of the latest edition of SolarPower Europe's flagship report, the Global Market Outlook for Solar Power 2020-2024, which has been published earlier this week. In the report, we take a comprehensive look at the whole global solar market, both backward and forward. Let's see if the slides move. Okay, great. So before we start, a few words of this year's edition. So first of all, we are delighted to have a special focus on the sub-Saharan Africa region that we did in cooperation with the European investment program Get Invest. And in addition, as we did in the past, the report looks at solar developments in countries around the globe that installed more than 1 gigawatt of solar in 2019. And as you will see shortly, quite many new countries have entered this club in 2019. Before we start, thanks to our sponsor members in particular, but also to all members of SolarPower Europe who make our work possible. And on top of that, I would like to highlight the important contribution of national associations and experts all around the world that have supported us with their in-depth knowledge of their countries and making this report a truly international collaborative work. Let's see if it moves. Yes. Great. So let's start off talking about costs. Solar's success story over other technology has a variety of reasons indeed, but a key factor is its rapid cost reduction over the last decade, which finally, as you can see, has led solar to become the cost leader. And while the cost of solar PV generation has been lower than unsubsidized fossil fuels and nuclear for several years already, now they're often less costly than gas and even wind in several regions across the world. This graph that you see, it's information taken from the US investment bank Lazard. And it's the first time the average of the solar range is lower than anyone else. So quite an achievement, I would say. The LCOE analysis version 13 from Lazard shows that utility scale solar cost is improving over the previous version by 7%. Then again, this was the historical trend, but let's give a closer look to the 2019 snapshot. As you can see in the 3 bars on the left, represents residential, CNI, and utility scale solar PV. Large-scale solar is by far cheaper than new conventional power generation sources such as nuclear and coal, but now consistently also cheaper than CCGT, so gas. The economics has further improved from last year, but at the same time, it's interesting to see that solar has started to compete with another fossil fuel segment, which is gas turbines that are used to meet peak demand, so gas peakers, as they called. We have seen a rapidly decreasing cost for batteries, and therefore solar plus storage can outcompete gas peakers. This depending on region and framework conditions, of course. This always plays an important role. Now, we have seen costs. Let's have a quick look at prices as well. Solar's constantly increasing competitiveness around the world can be well observed in these graphs, which depicts the power tender results in 2019, some selection of lowest auction bids. You can see that in 2019, tenders and auctions led to new low for solar bids, awards, and contracts. Looking at the previous year, we had the 2 US cents kilowatt hour level that could be seen in several instances. But in 2019, we reached 1 cent, 1 US cent level, being touched multiple times and in different countries. So for 2019, we have seen it in Portugal, in the UAE, in Brazil, and even in California, even though rounded up makes it to 2, but in fact it's below 2. What is also interesting is that in 2019, several tenders were won in the 2 US cent range in developing and emerging economies, with the support from international lenders, especially developing financing institutions. The risk for solar projects can be substantially reduced in these regions. And one example of this trend is the 2.5 US cents per kilowatt hour bid in Ethiopia, which is listed here. It used to be a new world record for a solar power tariff at the time in Africa, which was secured thanks to a scaling solar program of the World Bank Group. So we really see a diversification taking place. Now let's have a look at the annual installed capacity. In 2019, 117 gigawatts of solar were installed globally, which represents a 13% year-on-year growth over 104 additions in 2018, and therefore marking a new solar record. Originally, actually, we had expected that demand would rise much more, up to 128 gigawatts. But there was scarce visibility of what was going up in India. So the world market leader had this solar program restructuring, not only continuing, but also fully unfolding, differently from what us and CPIA, the Chinese association, had predicted. So they reduced their newly installed capacity by 14 gigawatts year on year. However, it's interesting to see that despite the decrease in the largest market, growth has been significant. Now let's have a look at the top 10. So, first of all, we see 3 newcomers. We see Vietnam, Spain, and Ukraine, whereas the previous top 10, Turkey, Mexico, and Netherlands are out. This time in the top 10 is South Korea, who added 3 gigawatts. The year before, you just needed more than 1.5 gigawatts to enter the top 10. 2 main trends here. China market decline for the second year in a row, and also India decreased their installations, but all the others increased quite significantly in some instances. China's market decline for the second year in a row led to only 30 gigawatts in 2019. This is a 32% decrease from 44.4 installed in 2018, and is even much higher compared to the record installations of 53 gigawatts in 2017. But still, China remains the world's largest market by far, adding over twice as much solar power capacity than the second largest market. US then, second largest, saw an almost 20% market growth in 2019, up to 13.3 gigawatts, which is a bit more than 2 gigawatts from the year before, providing enough cushion to comfortably maintain its rank as the second world largest market. And here, the main growth driver was the looming decrease of the ITC, Federal Solar Investment Tax Credit, which rushed the installations before this convenient framework continues. There are multiple reasons for the decrease in demand in India, beyond the issues that we had seen in the years before, so goods and services tax, safeguard duties, land problems, access to financing, but as well grid quality, which in some instances is even missing transmission lines. There were additional issues, including news of state governments that are starting to renegotiate PPAs for several gigawatts of capacity. It's interesting to see that the government has set a very high target of 100 gigawatts deployed by 2022. This is the national target, but right now it seems very difficult these targets will be reached, but we'll see what happens in the future. Japan grew a little. It added a little more solar than the year before, reaching 7 gigawatts, up 4% compared to previous year. This reverses a declining trend that we had seen in the past, but this uptick comes mainly from time pressure on approved large-scale feed-in tariff projects that needed to be installed by the end of the fiscal year, so March 2020. And lastly, in the top 5, what I'll touch upon right now is Vietnam, which might be a surprise, not probably on many people's radars. 6.5 gigawatts in 2019, which is up 64 times up from less than 100 megawatts installed the year before. The surge is due to a very, very attractive and uncapped feed-in tariff scheme set up a couple of years back, offering 20-year contracts for a very convenient, tough reward rate of 9.35 cents, US cents per kilowatt hour. Let's move on. Cumulative capacity. We see that total PV power capacity increased by 23% to about more than 630 gigawatts by the end of 2019, up from a bit less than 520 in 2018. This means that solar power has grown by about 400 times since the start of the century. So in the moment in which the German feed-in tariff started in the 2000s. But still, even if we look 10 years back, the world's total installed PV capacity augmented by over 1,500%. This is massive growth rates. In terms of regional shares, the further rise of Asia-Pacific region has been stopped by the dramatic slow in China's growth and the contraction of Asia's number 2, India. Annual capacity in the APAC accounted for 67 gigawatts. So Asia-Pacific overall remains a strong leader in solar in 2019 with 58% of global solar power generation capacities. This is exactly the same percentage as the year before. And by the way, please note that we separate China from APAC because China is so big, but indeed they're accounted together in this analysis. It's interesting to see also that the strong growth here in Europe, on the other hand, had no effects on the market shares either. The continent stopped these several year-long market losses, but in 2019, the global share stayed at the same level of the year before, at 24%. We had additions of 22.9 gigawatts in Europe and stably kept its second position based on cumulative capacity of almost 150 gigawatts. And then we have the Americas, again, the third largest region in 2019. Cumulative capacity are about 100 gigawatts and a 60% share. And lastly, despite a very strong growth that we saw in Middle East and Africa, this resulted in a tiny overall growth in terms of cumulative numbers, only 0.7% in absolute terms, totaling 17 gigawatts. So a long way to go, but indeed something to look forward to in the future. When looking at individual countries, we see that indeed China's dramatic market contraction has not affected this strong solar performance. Its operational solar power generation capacity is at 32%, so it decreased a couple of percentage points from last year, but still equals to about a third of the power fleet worldwide. The sequence of the closest followers hasn't changed. China followed by United States, Japan, and Germany. However, and this is a new graph that we started from this year. If you look at VAT per capita, the picture is completely different. First of all, none of the top 3 markets, China, USA, and India, is anywhere to be seen on the VAT per capita top 10 list. The top 3 in this rank are indeed belonging as well to the top 10 biggest markets, so Australia, Japan, and Germany. But the others from the list are not. And indeed, most of them are pretty small nations with 10 million citizens or less. That was for the backward look at the past. Now let's have a quick glance into the future. First of all, indeed, what has been most relevant, as you probably guess, is COVID. So all leading solar market analysts have significantly decreased their 2020 forecast during the first months of the year to account for the impact of COVID-19 on their market models. And by the end of May, so about the time we finished, we reached the editorial deadline for our report. The analyst medium scenarios range between 106 gigawatts to 111 from Wood Mackenzie to Bloomberg New Energy Finance, with an outlier of the IEA, which anticipates only 90 gigawatts of solar this year because of supply chain disruption, lockdown measures, and so on. Our market analysis resulted in a medium scenario anticipating about 112 gigawatts of newly PV installed capacity in 2020, making it the most optimistic global solar forecast, even though only by a slim margin. So we still fall within the range of other analysts. Compared to 2019, this would translate into a 4% market shrinkage over the 116.9 gigawatts added in 2019. Maybe one word about our methodology. Here you can see the three scenarios, so historical data on the left in gray, and the three scenarios, the high and low are bars, whereas the medium scenario is a line. We developed this 5-year forecast that consists of these three scenarios. The medium scenario anticipates the most likely development given the current state of play of the market. On the other hand, the low scenario forecast is based on the assumption that policymakers halt solar support and several other issues arise, so including interest rate hikes, severe financial crisis, or indeed a strong comeback of COVID-19. And conversely, the high scenario forecasts are the best optimal case in which policy support, financial conditions, and other factors are enhanced. So for now, what we believe is that the effect of the virus seems to be under control in many countries where the lockdown measures are being lifted and economies are being boosted with significant recovery packages. Other markets, though, still appear to be very much in the midst of the crisis. The Global Solar Council, our partner in this publication, has conducted a survey on the impacts on COVID-19 on the solar sector, which outlines that despite the disruption, the industry has the chance to come back even stronger with the support of recovery packages. And this is something that is somewhat reflected here in the graph. So all in all, we expect solar to get back on its growth path. So you can see a strong recovery already taking place in 2021. However, 2020 will be somewhat of a lost year due to COVID-19. By 2023, we expect annual additions to be already larger than anticipated last year. So a few years to recover from COVID-19. And then when we look at total installed global solar capacities, our market outlook 2020 shows that COVID-19 resulted in a little lower growth. So more little, but about 10 gigawatts than forecasted in last year's GMO. So in 2020, we project a cumulative installed capacity of 746 gigawatts for the medium scenario. Also, our new 5-year outlook anticipates that under the medium scenario, the global power generation plant capacities will reach almost 1.5 terawatt in 2024. But under optimal conditions, this could be much larger. It could reach 1.7 terawatts by the end of 2024. So it's a range of 200 gigawatts in just 5 years. The most likely scenario for entering the solar terawatt age is 2022. And it's only 4 years after the 0.5 terawatt level was reached last year. So, sorry, 2018. So next milestones to be reached over the next 5 years, 700 gigawatts in 2020, 1 terawatt in 2022, 1.2 terawatt in 2023. A few words about gigawatt solar markets. So the first pie shown here is the situation as it was last year. We had 11 markets that installed more than 1 gigawatt of solar. But we can see that the situation has improved significantly in 2019. 16 countries installed more than 1 gigawatt of solar. This is a 45% growth compared to 2018. If you would like to know more about each of them, we have dedicated articles in the report that have been drafted in collaboration with national associations for this country. However, the message here is that it's interesting to see gigawatt markets today belong to all continents, confirming the diversification trend that we have already seen in the past. And lastly, we give a glimpse to 2020. Because of COVID, we anticipate the number to slightly decrease to 14 this year. But however, we expect the growth to continue, reaching 19 gigawatt scale markets in 2021, and the trend to continue in the future. Already 2022, we expect 21, if not more, gigawatt scale market. And out of this list, it's interesting to see Europe back on the solar map. And indeed, the new growth phase that started in 2017 in Europe has gained huge momentum in 2019, both for the entire continent and giving a closer look at the European Union. After increasing demand in the two-digit range, low two-digit range, at 21% to 11.2 gigawatts in 2018, solar additions in Europe have more than doubled to, as said, 22.9 in 2019, which has made the region the second largest solar market in the world last year. So when we look at Europe as a block, is indeed the second largest solar market. The EU 28 alone added 16.7 gigawatts, which translates into an even larger growth of 106%. Europe's solar boom is carried on many shoulders. You can see that the light blue bars are increasing in the pies. 4 countries added over 1 gigawatt in 2019, so Spain, Germany, Ukraine, and the Netherlands, with a few others getting very close to that level. Few countries, including Turkey, France, and Poland, almost made it, but not quite. So let's have a quick look at what's going in the EU markets that reach the gigawatt scale. So first of all, let's have a look at Spain. As expected, turned out to be the EU's largest solar market, installing 4.8 gigawatts in annual terms, of which the bulk stemmed from the 2017 auctions that had a grid connection deadline by the end of 2019. So projects need to be terminated by the end of 2019. So the result is that the market catapulted by 17 times from only 262 megawatts in 2018. It's interesting to see that Spain's installation number also included 550 megawatts of self-consumption system. And this is a capacity that has become quickly popular after the so-called sun tax that basically prohibited distributed solar in the country was discarded at the end of 2018. There was also a number of subsidy-free PPA power plants installed. Still, there are some grid constraints that prevented larger volumes of the 100 gigawatts system pipeline to be turned into reality. This is still a challenge, but as you can see from the graph, this is a graph from the Spanish PV association UNEF. It depicts utility scale market forecast, and we can see that a stable large-scale segment is expected in line with government ambition to reach about 40 gigawatts of solar by 2030. Quick look at Germany. Was the EU's top market in 2018 and the years in the past, but despite a strong growth of 34%, almost 4 gigawatts, still is only enough to secure rank 2 in the EU last year. The German market is backed by larger annual tender volumes, strong interest in self-consumption, as well as feed-in premium system in the commercial and residential sector. And we can also see the first subsidy-free systems, as Germany's solar sector stood very strong in 2019, indeed. Also important to mention that this growth is meant to continue in light of the lifting of the solar cap, which has not been formalized, but has been announced by the German administration. And then finally, Netherlands experienced further growth as well, adding 2.4 gigawatts compared to 1.5 the year before. It is today the third largest market in the EU. Dutch solar investors continue to profit from a solid net metering scheme for residential rooftop systems and a regular tendering program for commercial and ground-mounted PV plants. Because of this, the outlook appears positive for all segments, with sustained growth expected in the next 5 years. And overall, the picture in Europe is bright. So interest in solar has increased again, and out of the 28 or former 28 EU member states, 18 exhibited larger installation numbers than the year before. It's interesting to compare last year's forecast with this year's forecast. So the dark yellow or the orange on the left is last year's forecast, and the brighter yellow is this year's forecast. Indeed, a 13% growth took place in 2019, so all in all, it's been a good year. However, we had forecast a higher growth degree by a fairly large margin. The reason of this overestimation is indeed the Chinese solar program restructuring, which was quite difficult to picture at the time. In our medium scenario, we estimate that new solar PV installed capacity will drop 4% to 112, as said, in 2020. So not that much of a decrease. However, if we compare it to what we had predicted last year, we had 144 gigawatts forecast for 2020. And so this decrease would be much higher than 22% or 32 gigawatts. So here we can fully see the COVID-19 effect in full scale. But then again, we assume that the medium scenario has a notable 34% growth rate to 150 gigawatts in 2021, which does anticipate significant levels of governmental recovery support. This capacity will be somewhat shorter than the previous year's forecast. It will take only 2022 to go back on track, and the virus impact to be fully left behind, we need to wait 2023. So going towards the end of my presentation, let's look at the larger picture. Solar in 2019 maintained its title as the most attractive power generation source installed in 2019. As in the years before, not only solar PV added more than any fossil fuel and nuclear power generation capacity combined, but it also saw nearly twice as much power installed as wind, and more than all renewables together. On top of these impressive achievements, solar generation share increased to 48% compared to 42% in 2018. So any other gigawatt installed in 2019 was solar, essentially. So this gives a really positive outlook, right? But then if you look at the larger picture and take into perspective the developments, looking at solar cumulative capacity share is still very small. It adds up about 88.5% of capacity globally. And regarding actual output, all solar PV system united generated 2.6% of global power output. This is also true in comparison to renewables as a whole, which own about 1/3 of total generation capacity and about 1/4 in the world's power output in 2018. So these are two very different pictures. The good news is that the market potential for solar is immense and constantly improving its cost competitiveness. So this will really enable the technology to reach an increasingly larger share. And then to conclude with a few concluding remarks, summing up my presentation, we are the cost leaders across energy technologies, with the LCOE improving every year and expected to go even further in the future. Bids across all regions of the world, including in developing economies, show cost competitiveness of solar. The $1 cent range has been reached several times, and the $2 is almost the new normal. 2019 has been a good year for solar, with a 13% growth to 117 gigawatts annually installed. Further diversification is taking place, with the number of gigawatt markets expanding and making it less dependent on individual countries' performance. The world is experiencing strong COVID-19 impacts, and the solar sector is also being affected. We expect, under the mid scenario, a decrease of 4% to 112 gigawatts in 2020. It is not a market plunge, but it is much slower than the growth we had expected pre-COVID. While the market will pick up rapidly post-2020, with about 150 gigawatts already in 2021, it will take a couple of years more to fully get back on track. Recovery, importantly, will depend largely on the effectiveness of government policies to tackle the COVID-19 crisis. So governments have really the opportunity to accelerate energy transition and realize the structural benefits renewables can bring regarding economic recovery and job creation. With the right policies in place, governments can enable local solar to unfold this full potential and lead the energy transition. With this, I concluded. Here, I left a link with the download of the Global Market Outlook, which has free access. And many thanks for your attention. I look forward to asking and addressing your questions afterwards. Thanks.
Stefan, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Thanks, Raffaele, for the insights and for the presentation of your new GMO, which actually has been launched this week. So I'm happy to see it as one of the first person. Yeah. So the question is, how can Sungrow contribute to the growth which we will see in the next coming years? I mean, we saw from Raffaele that there will be a drop in 2020 due to COVID, but there will be a recovery in the market very soon again, latest in 2023. And the question is here, how can Sungrow contribute to this growth? And I'm happy to show you some insights of Sungrow. So I want to show you who we are. I mean, I don't think most of you know Sungrow very well. I think most of the audience already used Sungrow as an inverter manufacturer, but for sure there's some news for you. I don't want to go into too much products because we had an extensive webinar week this week with a lot of dedicated presentations on products. So I don't want to address products so much. So I want to give you an overview about the product presentation, the product portfolio, what we have. But let's start with actually who we are. Well, according to Bloomberg New Energy Finance, Sungrow is the world's most bankable inverter brand. So what does this mean? This means that actually in all the bankable projects built so far in the world, Sungrow has been used more than other inverter brands. And all of these projects using Sungrow inverters have been bankable. So there's actually no bank out there in the world who is not financing projects with Sungrow inverters. I think this is a very important message to the audience. I don't know if this is well known. There was a press release end of last year, but I want to highlight this, that especially for investors, this is a very, very interesting message. Sungrow has been launched in 1997, sorry. And in 2006, Sungrow went international. So Sungrow Germany was one of the first outside branches which have been initiated at that time. 2011, Sungrow was listed at the Shanghai Stock Exchange, and in 2015, Sungrow became, for the very first time, the #1 inverter in terms of global share. 2018, we launched our India factory. This India factory, we are serving, of course, the local Indian market, but also the US market due to the Chinese-US trade. I wouldn't call it war, but trade interconnection, let's call it that way. In 2019, we hit 100 gigawatt of installation. So 100 gigawatt of, just look at the numbers from Raffaele, from 633 gigawatt installed cumulative have been installed with Sungrow inverters. This is a market share of roughly 17-18%. So Sungrow is not only doing inverters, as most of you might believe. So we are doing also energy storage. We are doing floating PV systems. We are actually also engaged in project development and EPC. We have also a power electronic subsidy in China, who is serving the mobility market, the EV market. And we are also a producer of wind energy converter. And I have to say that the project development, EPC, power electronics, and the wind energy converter business is a business we are doing locally in China only. We are currently looking into the EPC business to go outside of China. We have some first projects in Asia, but currently it's not foreseen to offer EPC and project development in Europe for several reasons. Sungrow has showed a very robust performance in the last couple of years. So there was a CAGR of 41% from 2010 to 2019. We shipped in 2019 over 17 gigawatts. And as I just mentioned, we installed 100 gigawatts of solar inverters to the world, to the solar world, out of 633 gigawatts. Why is Sungrow so strong? One of the DNA of Sungrow, I would call it that way, is really R&D. So 40% of our personnel in headquarters in China is working in R&D. We invested $90 million in R&D. This can be also found in our financial statement. And Sungrow is also one of the leading companies in terms of registered patents out there, especially in terms of power electronics, of course. We have a very good test laboratory in China, which is certified by among lots of certification bodies like TÜV Rheinland, TÜV Süd, CSA, and UL. And since we just became in China one of the first manufacturers who received the witnessed manufacturing testing of TÜV Rheinland. What does this mean? This means that actually we can do the testing in-house, of course, witnessed by the certification body. This is important for customers to know that actually this can save time in terms of project cycle. So product cycle, and product development, and product certifications. Because we saw in the past that product certification is an issue. We have been delayed in some certifications, unfortunately. But now having this witnessed this VMT certification, hopefully we will speed up our certification process. I'm pretty sure that we do. This picture, by the way, is our EMC chamber. It's one of the, I think it's even the biggest EMC chamber in the PV market. even want to put a 20 feet container in there and do EMC testing. Our production capacity, since we launched a new production manufacturing, a new production facility beginning of last year in China, reached now 50 gigawatts. So in China, we have a capacity of 47 gigawatts for PV and 6 gigawatt hours for storage. And our Indian factory has a capacity of 3 gigawatt, which brings a total capacity sum of 50 gigawatt. I think this is also a huge number, important number for the market. Having enough capacity for the years to come, for the growth, what we see from Raffaele's presentation just a few minutes ago. Sungrow is located, or is footprint everywhere in the world. So we are serving over 60 countries. We have over 50 service outlets, either run by Sungrow service staff or by third parties, service providers. And we have 20 international subsidiaries in Europe, in the world. And in Europe, we have 6 subsidiries. Myself, I work in the subsidiary. I work in the Sungrow Germany, in the Munich office. Now let's take a very brief look on our products. As I said, we had an intensive webinar week, so lots of these products, which I just touched briefly now. There was dedicated webinars this week. I hope some of the audience took the chance and to visit them. So what I want to show here is that actually Sungrow can serve all the segments, from utility to CNI, residential, and we also have a monitoring solutions. In terms of utility scale, our new central inverter, the SG6250 HVMV, Javi Blanco made a very good presentation on this on Monday. We recommend this new product for flat terrains, for big flat terrains projects. This comes actually this is a new concept from Sungrow. So this MV station is equipped with 2 3 megawatt central inverters. It's actually a little bit more than 3 megawatt. It's 3.125, depends on the temperature what you're looking at. So 2 central inverters in a 40 feet container, together with an MV and an RMU. We recommend this for big projects, with flat terrains. Even this has got now 4 MPPTs, but still considered for flat terrains, for wide land installations. And I also want to address you that for Europe, I think most of the audience knows, we also have a local skid solution, where actually you can attach the central inverters directly to the skid. So why we do this sometimes in Germany, sometimes in Europe, sorry, you have kinds of regulations where it's better to use local supplier or local MV manufacturer who also talks directly with the grid to make sure that the project runs smooth. Another product for utility scale is our new SG250HX. This is at the moment the world's most powerful 1500 volt string inverter available. So we launched this product end of last year. This is actually recommended for hilly terrains, for difficult terrains, large scale of course, but for difficult situations, it's sometimes better to use string inverters than central inverters, especially if you have shadings and different angles and hilly terrains, as you can see in this picture here. Our CNI system solution, or our CNI product range from 33 kV to 110 kV. These are air-cooled inverters, especially designed for actually hot rooftops, what you can consider in summertime. Then we have a residential inverter range from 2.5 to 20 kV, single phase, three-phase, and our new family of three-phase hybrid inverters, which has been also presented by Andrea Polini this week. Also a very good presentation, which you can see on YouTube. If you missed it, it's really worth to take a look. And in terms of energy storage, we offer both. So we offer only PCS, so power conversion units, or we can also offer full turnkey stations. There was also a presentation this week from Tony in regards to the SC1725UD, which is our central inverter, so our PCS, and the SC50HV is our PCS for CNI market. And we actually made a turnkey solution out of it, which you can see in the lower bottom, the ST 159 kVH 50HV. This is for me one of the best products at the moment for CNI applications. It's a fully cooled, HVAC cooled system with PCS, with battery inside, with EMS inside, especially dedicated for the CNI market. It's available very soon. And for the utility scale, we have a similar product. So we use the SC1725 two times, and we make a PCS of over 3 megawatts, combined with a battery station, which is also, of course, HVAC cooled. We serve the utility market in terms of for large scale. So Sungrow has a wide range of reference projects. In total, we have a market share of 15%. We have references all over, from the US to Europe, obviously China, India, UK, Japan. So I think there's actually no country out there who has solar where you don't find any Sungrow inverter. In terms of ESS, so storage systems, we obtained 900 ESS projects globally, also all over the world, in the US, in the UK, in China, obviously, in Japan. So now I want to give you some insights in our inverter roadmap for this year. So in terms of string inverters, we will come out with a new product in Q3 this year. I call it a small brother of the 250. It's a 125 SC125HX product with 125 kV, 1,500 volt. Now you might ask, why is Sungrow going smaller? Well, this was actually upon customer request. There were some customers out there where you can say that the SC250HX was not suitable for their reference projects, for their reference designs, what they had. So that's why they ask us if we can, perfect product, yeah, but please, it's too big. Can you do it smaller? So that's, I think there's also one strength of Sungrow that we can actually, we can be very fast from customer requirements, customer request to a new product. I mean, this product has been now developed in the last half year, and we will launch it in the course of Q3. Of course, we will do this not for every request, but if there's a certain pipeline, we are absolutely open to discuss. As I just mentioned, we will also come up with a new outdoor inverter, central inverter outdoor, first time ever. It's the SG3125HV30, and we also will launch the similar MV station to it. As I just mentioned, Javier Blanco made a presentation on this in the course of early this week. And for string inverters and for central inverters, we add frequently new features like the DC coupling port for ESS integration. We release the IV scan for bifacial modules, arc fault detection. We added. We increased the speed of our power line communication to 115 kilobit. So you see more and more features coming from Sungrow also for the existing products. Now in 2021, what will come? Honestly speaking, there will be for sure a new string inverters. Not yet sure what our Chinese colleagues actually do. What I hear is that of course power density is always key. So I expect that to have even a bigger inverter, but let's. I'm also don't know exactly what will come, but there is new developments ongoing. The Chinese are always very secret on this. But what I can tell you is, in terms of central inverters, the trend will go to bigger building blocks. So there will be a new central inverter coming, of course, also outdoor. Why outdoor? Because outdoor definitely will bring the system cost down because you don't need additional enclosures, and there will be also a dedicated MV station for this product. Now I want to at the end of my presentation I want to give you 3 innovation trends where actually Sungrow is also contributing to. Of course, one is in terms of ESS. So the trend what we see, and I'm pretty sure that most of the audience will agree, is that there will be a common application of PV and storage in the very, very near future. I mean, we see also that our conventional PV customers, they're looking into storage. Nowadays, most of the customers doing storage are actually only storage customers. But we see that customers doing PV for years are now looking also into ESS. Makes sense? Because if you look at the entire value chain of power generation, from generation to consumption, there's always a reason to add storage, from smoothing the output to voltage frequency regulation, microgrid or demand response for end customers. So this is definitely a trend what we see. One important topic is also grid stability. Yeah. So and I want to highlight the so-called VSG technology. This is a virtual synchronous generator. I think also Andrea Polini addressed this very briefly in the presentation this week. So what is it? I mean, you must consider if more and more desynchronized generators are replacing synchronized generators. You know, you're missing the rotating mass of the synchronized. So there might be a situation of grid frequency instabilization, and with this VSG, you can call it a kind of virtual rotating mass. Can be obtained to every generator, yeah, by adding a short-term energy storage to it, combined with a suitable control mechanism. So Sungrow is actually already promoting this heavily for the first PCS stations. So this is certainly something what the market requires, and to keep the grid stable, bringing more and more renewables into the grid. What we also see it's the trend of green hydrogen. So according to Hydrogen Europe, there will be investments of 430 billion euro until 2030 for hydrogen. For hydrogen production, hydrogen infrastructure and storage, and for hydrogen applications like steel production, synthetic kerosene, mobility applications, heating, and also balancing of power production. And out of this hydrogen production, Hydrogen Europe actually expects that of this 15.8 million tons, what we see in 2030, 4.4 million tons will come out of green hydrogen. So what does it mean, green hydrogen? Green hydrogen means that this hydrogen being produced carbon neutral. So by wind, by power, by wind and by solar. And solar definitely will be a big game, will be a big player here. And I just read, just the government of Germany this week announced the hydrogen strategy paper, which is also very interesting. And one content of this article is also about green hydrogen and speaking about how to produce green hydrogen in the MENA region or even in North Africa. Morocco is one of the most important countries at the moment for this, and to bring them to Europe. So the production of green hydrogen will not take place in Europe. I don't think so. Of green hydrogen, sorry. It will mainly take place in Africa or in the MENA region, because of the cost producing the hydrogen there is much cheaper than in Europe, because there's much more sun and the yield is much higher for PV. Yeah, this is actually the end of my presentation. I thank you very much for your attention. Looking forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan, for the presentation. And yes, if anyone has questions, please write them below. I know a lot of people have been asking questions already. We have answered a few of them directly in the private chat. If you have anything else, we are already 2 minutes over, but we're willing to wait another 5 or a couple of minutes for these other questions. I did post a link for our YouTube channel inside the chat. All of our past webinars that Stefan has talked about, there you can find them here. They've been posted within the last couple of days, and this webinar as well will be posted probably in another day or two.
No questions, Paul?
We have a couple of people who are writing right now. I'll just give them another couple of seconds. Yeah, and then we'll wait. Yeah.
Cool.
I have a question here from Rocky. Will Asia Pacific continue to dominate the global demand in the future?
I can take this one. Maybe Stefan, I don't know if you want to integrate later, but I guess is destined to me. So the quick answer, I think, is yes. It's never easy to forecast future of installed capacity for industry expert, and the solar market is too dynamic and still hinges on few countries, in particular China, as I mentioned. So still there is some diversification, but that can influence quite a lot the course of the entire industry. But in our mid-scenario forecast, we clearly see that China and the rest of Asia Pacific will continue to dominate global demand, especially once the Chinese solar market program restructuring is completed, which is scheduled for next year. So in the country, and not just ourselves, but also the Chinese Solar Industry Association expect to develop more smoothly. And on top of China, indeed, India will be still a strong driver, whereas other new countries are popping up here and there. Australia is one of the largest markets. Also, Vietnam, as you see from my presentation, will have an important role in the future. And indeed, even the smaller countries will increase solar capacity because they will simply become the cheapest and most versatile power generation source.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I have a question here from Kathy. Is the OND file for the new central inverter available now? This is a technical question here.
The OND file, actually, I'm not pretty sure, but I think it should be available because I know that we are offering this product already for projects for 2021. But I would check. I mean, if Katie can drop us an email, we can check and get back to her.
Okay, great. And we have another question here from Eva. Hi, Stefan. Thanks for your presentation. Regarding the hydrogen part, can you please share a little bit more about Sungrow's plan on hydrogen power, projects expansion, supply chain objectives?
Yeah, I'm pretty happy to do. So, I mean, we will not enter the electrolyzer business. So, I mean, our DNA or our core competence is power electronics, inverters. So, and as I mentioned, I mean, solar can be a big player in terms of producing green hydrogen, and for this you actually need inverters who provides DC power to the electrolyzer, and this is actually where we are entering to the game. We actually have our first reference project in China, where we actually playing a little bit around to see how things goes, and also to see what does it really require in terms of powering an electrolyzer. But for sure there will be more news in the coming months on this. Still something, let's say, in the R&D phase, but we are definitely looking into this, how we can enter this market.
Great, thank you for that explanation. Okay, we don't have any other questions here from our attendees. So again, I'd like to thank both of our presenters today, Stefan and Raffaele. And of course, I'd like to thank our audience for joining us today and attending. We are now 7 minutes over, so let's conclude today's topic. Thanks again, and I wish everyone a good day. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks, Raffaele.
Thanks also from my side. Have a nice day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks to all. Bye-bye.